Hello, Johns Island Club Director of Golf Steve Hudson here. We're very excited for the Boys and Girls Club event to return to our newly renovated West Golf Course here on November 6th. When you come out, you're going to love what you see on the golf course, and as part of your day here, you're going to have a number of different pitches and chips. Before we get into demonstrating how to hit a pitch and a chip, let's talk about the difference. One of the most common questions we receive as instructors is, what is that difference? Well, a chip is generally a shot that spends a majority of its time on the ground. A pitch is a shot that spends a majority of its time in the air. A general rule of thumb is that you want to get the ball on the ground as quick as possible. So you want to play chips whenever you possibly can. And the reason for that is it's going to provide you much greater margin for error than if you're always trying to fly something directly to the hole. All right. So when it comes time for you to decide whether you're going to play a pitch or a chip, the first thing that you want to do is to survey your landscape. What type of shot are you going to have in front of you? Is it something that's going to benefit from playing a shot along the ground? Is it something that's going to benefit from playing something in the air? Maybe you have some mounding, maybe you have a bunker, something along those lines that are going to dictate what type of shot that you want to hit. Regardless, when you get into the chip and when you get into the pitch, there's a couple things that you want to consider for both types of shots. First, when you're hitting a chip, you generally want to take a club that has the least amount of loft. All right, so the most important thing when it comes to that is taking the club that you trust the most. For me, that is something between a sand wedge, which has a lot of loft, and a 9-iron. And on occasion, I even like to bump and run a little hybrid, and I'm going to demonstrate all three of those. When you get into the chip shot, one thing that you want to make sure is that you really create a nice centered balance here for yourself. So you're not big wide stance that encourages a lot of movement here. You want to have your feet narrow, and you really want to limit your motion when it comes to your sternum or your center of gravity, okay? So that's number one. Number two is you want to create a lot of face control. So regardless of what club you're using, okay, you want to make sure that that face has the least amount of face rotation here, okay, that you possibly can. Now let me show you how you do that, okay? When you're taking your setup position, you want to make sure that weight leans on the forward portion, on your forward foot. That's number one. Number two, make sure you have a nice narrow stance. Again, you're not nice and wide, nice and narrow. And so that limits the amount of lateral motion during a chip, okay? Number three, make sure you get set up. We're going to put that ball in the middle of the stance. And with that weight forward, those hands are going to be ahead of the golf ball. All right? And then number four, I want you to make sure that your chipping motion has the least amount of wrist action that it possibly can. Now, why that is that's going to help facilitate that club face stability and give you the best opportunity to hit a great chip. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to this short flag, the one right in front of us here. Okay, so you could see there was not a lot of wrist action in that motion. All right, so that's one. Now, that was utilizing my sand wedge. Now, I'm going to utilize my 9-iron to hit something a little bit lower, a little bit more on the ground. Not bad. You can see that the smaller motion there will not let the ball get too far away from me if I should hit a funny shot. I've also got here an 18-degree hybrid. This is a very effective shot for these types of situations, where maybe the grain is running into you, all right? Or maybe you're not comfortable with the leading edge of a 9-iron or a sand wedge, okay? So the nice flat sole generally encourages the club to slide along the turf. Let me demonstrate. Because of the length of this club, there is going to be a subtle setup adjustment here. I want to see you in just a little closer to this club. I don't want to see you out like this, like you would be if you were hitting a full hybrid from the fairway. In nice and close, it's going to get your eyes a little bit more directly over the ball. All right, and from there, it's the same motion. Okay? Back and through, limited wrist action. Let's keep that club face nice and stable. Okay, you can see a very efficient motion. Not a lot can go wrong when you're using a hybrid, if the situation is right. Now, let's talk about a pitch. Okay? I'm back to my sand wedge, which is 56 degrees, and a pitch, as we've already discussed, is something that spends a little bit more time in the air than it does along the ground. All right? So when hitting a pitch, okay, we want to do much the same thing here with our setup. We don't want to give a big variety of lateral motion here. Okay, so we don't want to put ourselves in a spot where we create a lot of moving parts. Club face control and club face stability are still paramount to executing a nice pitch. Now, in this particular situation, I'm going to hit a pitch to this far flag. Under normal circumstances, I might still run this ball along the ground using either a 9-iron or a hybrid. Okay, but for purposes of demonstration, I'm going to fly this ball most of the way to the hole. Now, when setting up for a pitch, a couple of small differences here. I still want to see you in a spot where your stance is nice and narrow that limits that lateral motion. That's number one. Okay. Number two, I want to see that ball in the middle to slightly forward portion of your stance. All right, so that's going to be middle, maybe a little bit farther forward. The reason for that is that's going to encourage some loft when you're hitting a pitch shot. Okay? And number three, we're going to open up our club face just a little bit more so that we can engage the sole, we can engage the bounce of our sand wedge. All right, so when we get into this shot here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to put the club down first. So we're going to set the club up the way we need to with the amount of loft that we need to facilitate the type of shot that we're going to hit. Once you get the club set, with the leading edge perpendicular to your target line, okay, then we're going to set into the handle of the club. That's very important. Set the club first, okay, then set your body into the handle of the club. What I see many of my students do is set the body up first, okay, and then open up the club face. Well, now that club face is pointing well to the right. Precision is going to be very difficult. All right, so we're going to set the club up first. Then we're going to set the body up to the handle. All right. From there, you can see my stance is a little bit more open. Okay, open, it means pointing to the left. The reason for that is I'm accommodating the more open club face. Okay. From there, once again, there's not going to be a lot of wrist action when hitting this shot. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of a bigger backswing, get my club to roughly 3 o'clock, okay, on the backswing. And then from here, I'm not going to use any wrists on the way through. I'm going to turn and rotate through, okay, with my pelvis, okay, and my torso. That's going to limit the hand action. It's going to create that club face stability. Okay, and I'm going to finish on the forward foot with my trail heel slightly off the ground. Let me demonstrate. Ball in the middle portion of the stance, slightly forward. Club face square to the target line. Okay. I'm setting up to my handle here. So I got my club set, I'm setting up to the handle. And from there, back and through. At the finish position, as I mentioned, my trail heel is going to be off the ground. My sternum and my belt buckle are going to be facing the target. And I'm going to fly this ball a majority of the way to the hole. Hope you find these tips helpful. We're really looking forward to seeing you here for the Boys and Girls Club outing November 6th, Johns Island Club West.